Where Gurren Lagann used drills to pierce the heavens, and Kill la Kill used thread to weave its story, Imaishi and Nakashima's new burning passion storyline takes the iconography to the next logical step, using fire itself to drive the story forward. It's both boldly new in appearance, with its bright colors and liberal use of CG, yet immediately recognizable as an Imaishi work. While many haven't been blown away by the studio's output as of late, I think it's important to realize how little this resembles a recent Trigger release before getting into my thoughts on this film. Firstly, beyond the fact that this is the first feature film in the almost 8 years the studio has been operating, calling it a new anime by Studio Trigger isn't entirely honest. Similarly to how Darling in the Franxx was a co-production between Cloverworks and Trigger, this film is being co-produced by Trigger, X-Flag, and Sanzigen. So, who are Sanzigen and X-Flag? Well, Sanzigen is a CGI animation studio who have produced some less than stellar co-productions, with Leiden Films working on Arslan Seki and JC Staff with Heavy Object. But one of their more recent series from 2016, Babuki Baranki, was praised by many for its use of CGI and cel shading, with many articles and reviewers saying it was going to be the next big step in the future of CGI in anime. The third company involved is X-Flag, a video game developer who made Monster Strike, and not much else. So it looks like X-Flag is providing the cash, wanting to add Promare's characters to their IP and merchandise, while Trigger and Sanzigen are teaming up, attempting to polish and improve their integration of CGI into anime. To this end, I think Promare totally succeeds. While I'm not generally a fan of CGI use in anime, that's because it's usually done as a way for a cheap or lazy production to cut corners. And if there isn't any effort being put in, obviously it's gonna look like shit. But when you have auteurs like Imaishi and Tsushio working on a film, well, that raises expectations quite a bit. So, the two most important names attached to this project, in my opinion, are Hiroyuki Imaishi as director and Kazuki Nakashima as writer and creator. I'm sure you all know Imaishi's name by now, through his vast portfolio of animation work throughout the years. But since we're talking about him as a director, he's helmed Dead Leaves, Gurren Lagann, Panty and Stocking, Kill la Kill, Sex and Violence with Mach Speed, and Space Patrol Lulico, all of which I consider fantastic, as well as having his hand in almost all the Trigger production I deem good. Kazuki Nakashima, on the other hand, he's credited with the inception of both Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill. He penned the scripts, and he worked closely with Imaishi in supervising the project. On top of these two titans, we have Hiroyuki Sawano, a fantastic composer, who also worked with Imaishi and Nakashima on Kill la Kill, and Tsushio doing a lot of the key animation, who also worked on almost all of Imaishi's key projects. What I'm trying to get across with this breakdown of the studios and the staff involved is that Trigger's brought on their top dogs for this project, and it shows. So moving on to the art and animation, let's get that CGI elephant out of the room right away. Let's just rip that band-aid off. While there are some growing pains in the visuals, mainly the CGI frame rate and some of the more elaborate sequences, the ambition behind what they were trying to create here had me overlooking many of these small frame rate inconsistencies. Some scenes that stood out to me where this was noticeable, now minor spoilers for the next 10 seconds, so cover your ears for 10 seconds if you don't want to hear minor spoilers, were a scene of Leo rampaging through the city as a fire dragon, and a big mech battle near the end. There was a lot going on, and I could see some frame rate issues, but it wasn't so bad, and personally, for me, the crazy, colorful, fresh CGI style working in an Imaishi Tsushio cut with Sawano's music swelling, it looks great, and I'm sure this style of animation will speak to many other fans. And this brings me to my main takeaway with the visuals, and that's that even though it's using this new CGI style, the actual cuts of animation themselves, the choreography, the camera work, they make it feel like the blood-pumping anime I love and that Imaishi is known for directing, while still feeling new and different with this animation style. And at the same time, I understand people's aversion to CGI anime projects, but to those viewers I have to say, keep an open mind, and pay attention to the actual directing at work. For example, even though they're stylized vehicles, I love the cuts of animation in episode 6 of Panty and Stocking, with Chuck and Fastener fighting each other in their cars. It's easy to dismiss CGI outright after so much lazy integration of it in modern anime without actually analyzing what works and doesn't. And with Promare, I'd say it almost always works. Don't forget, Studio Zanzigen, they specialize in CG integration in anime and are coming off some highly praised projects. It's also important to note that there's a lot more 2D animation than is implied by the PVs and the preview footage released so far. Again, getting into minor spoiler territory for the next 10 seconds, there's a few cuts where Gallo and Leo are fighting at the end of their first battle. That's all 2D, looks beautiful. Scene where Leo awakens his power in a volcano, holy shit. And a final climactic cut that really pulls back in an epic way where you're seeing a whole lot going on. And you're going to be seeing these cuts in a lot of Sakuga threads and whatnot from here on out. Trust me. But beyond these things, the character art's great. It's as expressive and bombastic as usual for an Imaishi work. And there's always fun details worked into background characters for the especially observant. And overall, I found the art and animation phenomenal, regardless of those minor grievances I had concerning the frame rate at times. It is extremely minor. Now, moving on to the story section of this video. In the world of Promare, when certain individuals' lives are brought under enough stress, they violently burst forth into flames, becoming a new being called Burnish. These Burnish are systematically hunted down under the guise of public safety. Meanwhile, other more rebellious Burnish take a stand against their captors, enacting terrorist attacks demanding their kind be treated fairly. This is where Gallo and his crew of firefighter rescue force policemen come into play, to battle against the flames and apprehend the Burnish terrorists. And from the opening credits roll, you can tell Imaishi and Kazuki's knack for visual storytelling is on full display. Through the use of important visual metaphors like shapes, squares, triangles, circles, and flames, along with concise directing, Hiroyuki's able to set up and execute this story in an efficient and satisfying way. While the film's jam-packed, telling an entire Gurren Lagann Kill la Kill-esque story in under 2 hours, it doesn't feel incomplete or rushed, with Hiroyuki flexing his ability for madcap storytelling. While this does feel like a story that was incepted with a film runtime from the beginning, it does also feel like something that could have easily been expanded on and made into a TV series, if they felt so inclined. We learn about the lore of this world pretty thoroughly, considering the runtime, but there's also this feeling of potential for so much more. While Imaishi and Nakashima's previous works love delving into themes of chaos versus order and breaking free of tyrannical oppression, Promare's more focused on unity and different sides coming together in harmony. This change of focus was a neat way for the old formula to feel fresh. As far as how the story is told and progresses, it comes off as a predictable truncation of Nakashima and Hiroyuki's previous works. And I don't mean that in a bad way. The twists are predictable, the true villain is seen coming a mile away, I mean he's spoiled in the trailers, and the film has no problem throwing literal deus ex machinas at your face. But it's because of Imaishi's signature style of being in on the stupidity of it all, and how effortlessly he invites the audience to be in on the joke too, that it works so well. In trying to sum up my thoughts on the story as a whole, I can't help but think of and compare this to Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill. It's impossible not to. Which is entirely unfair, considering those are television series and have far more time to expand on the plot and develop their characters. Well, I can in good faith put Promare on the same level as those two shows after only one viewing. I consider both of them 10 out of 10s, so don't consider this too big a knock against Promare. The characters are a very interesting and uneven part of the film, and it's difficult to critique this part. So let's start off with our two main characters, Gallo and Leo. Gallo is our hot-headed protagonist, which you could probably glean immediately from a clip, or even just his design. He's dense, but means well and fights for Burning Rescue as their ace in the hole. In opposition to him, we have Leo, the leader of the rebelling Burnish forces. The setup for the opening fight was very interesting to me from a character perspective. While both Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill began with our heroes facing off against their oppressors, Promare flips the script, having our hero character working on the side of law and order, and our initial villain fighting for the side of disorder. It doesn't help that Gallo comes off as a bit of an arrogant prick, and we're almost immediately sympathizing with the Burnish. Similarly to how the themes focused on in this work keep it feeling fresh, the way in which these characters are introduced works similarly. These two characters received by far the most character development, and I was definitely satisfied with their characters' arcs by the end of the film. Two characters who also really stood out to me were Cray Foresight, and the biggest surprise of the film, Vulcan Hastus. So, Cray Foresight, his voice actor did a fantastic job as both playing this calm, cool, and collected president who sounds very gentle and compassionate, almost like childish at times in how caring he sounds. But until his mask slowly begins to slip and we find out he's this truly insane asshole. The voice actor just does a great job essentially playing two completely different characters in this film that are both great on their own. And on the other hand, Vulcan Hastus is a huge standout character, maybe my favorite, and he's just such an awesome piece of shit. He's just so fun to hate. He's so comically villainous and cruel, and he's constantly charging into battle and attacking people with his car, and it's just really fucking awesome. And on the other hand, you have almost all the side characters in this film that are completely superfluous. They're just there to be part of Burning Rescue. Maybe they do a cool thing or two, and they're voiced by an actor you know from Kill la Kill. And that's about it. None of them have any real development or any real character, and they don't really come back to do anything too crazy later in the film either, as almost all of the action and forward momentum is carried by Gallo and Leo. All in all, the characters that stood out to me I really enjoyed, and I still like the designs of the ones that didn't. Unfortunately, again, I feel like this was an example of what could have been rectified if the film had been fleshed out into a TV series. And there are simply too many characters to give ample screen time and character development, leaving many of them feeling quite forgettable. On to the sound and the music. It was definitely great, but also not the best. I personally enjoy Hiroyuki Sawano's music, though I understand criticisms that his distinct sound seems to resonate too much throughout his various works. In my opinion, the Kill la Kill OST is his best work to date, and the soundtrack of Promare seems to riff on it quite a bit, with a few tracks sounding quite similar to ones we've heard in the past, with a bit more pop and electronic influence. But hey, if you're gonna recycle some of your old music, you might as well recycle from the best, right? Besides that, my only other criticism is that some of the vocal tracks used as character themes that are fucking epic when you hear them for the first time begin to lose their luster upon repeated uses throughout the film. And this isn't too big of a knock considering the songs themselves are great, but I started to get Don't Lose Your Way deja vu, and not necessarily in a good way. So on to my final thoughts for the film. It may sound like I'm being pretty critical at times, but that's only because of having such high expectations for Imaishi and Nakashima. After leaving the theater, I figured I'd give this film a solid 9 out of 10 on my first viewing. It's hard enough to compare it to Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill at almost every turn. It begs you to do this itself. But you have to be careful in doing so, as both of those are almost 9 hours in length. So Promare does so many things great, and what it accomplishes in its runtime is impressive, but it still ends up feeling a bit rushed in its world building and in its character development. On the other hand, when the film ended, my heart was racing, and I legitimately felt as though I had just ridden a roller coaster. It really is that fast and jam-packed. And it's that roller coaster feeling that I feel most accurately captures what this film accomplishes. And regardless of my criticisms and my 9 out of 10 score, on a sheer enjoyment level, I could easily give this film a 10 out of 10. I was smiling ear to ear for almost the entire runtime, and I couldn't help but just sit there and nod my head in approval throughout at what I was seeing. So check it out on the big screen if it ends up playing near you, and I promise you're going to have a good time. And I hope you enjoyed this little comeback review video, and I'm hoping to do more like this in the future, so please stay tuned. Thank you very much.